What a great champion, Roger Federer. And more than that, he's shown what a great human being he is. A lot of character. Of course, he got very emotional towards the end there. But Vishal, he just shows just that human factor, that connect with the people, thanking the ball boys, thanking the volunteers, acknowledging all the legends who were there, even in that moment. Just speaks of the greatness of the man.
Yes, and that's what makes him so special and so loved all around the world. I mean, you know, this is his 20th Grand Slam that he's winning, and one would imagine, you know, he'd be a little used to it, but still, you know, just winning it is so emotional for him. It really gets him going, and that's one of the things that endears him to everyone all around the world. And I think it's so great to see the human side of such a prime athlete. You know, often, you know, we talk about people being steely and being, you know, emotionless, but just for an athlete to show out so much emotion and not being apologetic about it, it's unbelievable.
Yes, indeed, and the human side, and he retained his sense of humor there as well, when he talked about being in Australia since last year. So he didn't forget that.
Absolutely, Gaurav. Look, it was a very emotional time for him. We could all see that. I mean, I think the three of us were getting a little emotional ourselves. So let's admit to that. Roger, to me, is not just a great tennis player. I look at Roger as a sports icon. He transcends sports. He's like the Muhammad Ali's, the Michael Jordans, Pele, and the sort of ambassador he has been for tennis. I don't think tennis, I mean, with Nadal and Djokovic and the Murrays, you would not get somebody like Roger out there. And you're absolutely right. He's, like Vishal said, extremely open about being emotional. So the way I would put it is, he cried when he lost to Nadal. He cried when he won. So yes, it's a little bit of both. So, you know, that's the passion he has for tennis.
And Vishal, of course, the big question is 20 Grand Slam titles now, 4 ahead of Nadal, who's at 16. We spoke before the match, Roger's preserving himself, you know, playing, taking good breaks, staying away from the clay court. How long do you see him going?
Well, as a tennis fan, I'd love to see him go on for as long as he possibly can, because it's such a treat watching Roger Federer play. And, you know, the big question really will be how healthy he can stay. Clearly, he's very motivated to still play and perform, you know, and compete at the highest level and try and add to his kitty of Grand Slams. I think one of the smartest decisions he has taken post his injury is to skip the clay court season, because that is something that takes a toll on his body. And for him to just, I mean, the sad part of that is that for 2 months in a year, we will not get to see Roger Federer compete. Yes. You know, but I think it's a very smart decision on his part, and he will be a big threat at Wimbledon and at the US Open, and let's hope he stays healthy, he stays fit, because we've seen today he is still hungry.
I'm sure all tennis fans will hope for that. And we must talk about Cilic as well.
But you know, Gaurav, a lot also depends on Roger wanting it. It's actually, he's passionate, of course, he's very healthy, and he's well preserved, like Vishal said, but I think it has a lot to do with how much does he want it. He's won 20 slams. Okay? Nadal's at 16. The possibility of winning another 4 for Rafa, another 5 to go ahead of Roger, that's a tough ask. So I think a lot really comes from Roger, and the fact that Roger is now tapering off on his schedule. Yes, he's not playing the French, he's not playing the clay court season, he's preserving himself. A lot really comes down to, really, as I said, how much does Roger want out of these slams? I mean, how many more does he want to add to his kitty?
Absolutely, that's critical. We must talk about Cilic, of course. Outstanding fight back in this final as well. Just 29 years old. I say just 29 because in the context of Roger, as well as other players who are well over 30 and going strong, a lot of fuel in the tank there. He's now jumped up to world number 3 in the rankings. So I'm sure we are going to see much more of Cilic.
Well, yes, I think you know, he's maturing really well as a tennis player. You know, you see that in his performances, the way he's played right through these 2 weeks, and you know, obviously shows that he's in prime form. And if he can continue this way through the year, I think we're going to see him in a few more finals by the time 2018 finishes. And I think you know, a player like him is always dangerous because he's got these big weapons, and if he starts fighting on them, he's a very tough man to beat.
Right. We'll take a short break here, but come right back with another interesting question I want to pose to our experts here. But just for a short break, let's go away. Welcome back to Match Point, and what a classic final that was. Let's go back to that final winning point where Federer got his 20th Grand Slam title. Well, there you go, and interestingly, a line challenge on that final point, but wrapping it up with an ace. Great end to a fantastic final. And the question I want to now pose to both of you, and I might be throwing the cat among the pigeons here, but and it might be a loaded question given that Federer has won his 20th title. But starting with you, Vishal, who would you rate as the all-time greatest player?
Well, again, very tough to say. Obviously, Roger is definitely right up there. In my book, because I've had the pleasure of watching him play, for me, he's the greatest player of all time. But then again, I think the closest second that would come to him for me would be, Rod Laver, because let's not forget he's won 2 Grand Slams,
yes.
and in the middle for 4 years, 5 years, he didn't play any Grand Slams. So we can only talk about how much Rod Laver could have achieved. But I think for me, Federer is the greatest of all time, not just because of the 20 titles he's won, but also the humanity he's shown and what he's done for tennis in general all around the world. He's made it so much more popular now than it ever was. And I think for me, the true test of a great man is not just his conquest, but also his humility. And he's been humble right through in all his victories. And yeah, for me, he's the greatest of all time.
Absolutely. Sanjeev?
Gaurav, you're absolutely right. That's a loaded question. The greatest of all time is always going to be a very controversial topic, simply because, as Vishal said, Rod Laver, from a different era. Why it's very difficult to answer is simply because the equipment, nutrition, the style of play was so different in the 60s and the 50s. Yes. So who was the greatest? Could it have been Bill Tilden, Rod Laver, Rafa? See, Rafa on a head-to-head is ahead of Roger. If you look at Rafa's record against Roger, and you look at Djokovic, who's right neck to neck with Roger, I think there's a difference of one victory over Roger. It's tough to say that Roger is the greatest of all time. So in that sense, I would differ with Vishal simply because in my book, Roger is the prettiest player to watch, no doubt about it. But is he the greatest? It's a topic that will continue because we're talking about different eras, equipment, like I said, nutrition, and in your era, in Roger's era, if you have a losing record with your nemesis, Rafa Nadal, let's not forget, Rafa's got 10 French Opens, Roger's got 8 Wimbledons. Right. Roger's never beaten Rafa on clay, at least at the French Open. He has beaten him on clay. And Rafa has beaten Roger on grass in his backyard at Wimbledon. And he has a winning record against Roger on hard courts, outdoor hard courts. Sure. So it's a tough,
absolutely.
It's a tough question to respond to because it'll be open-ended.
Yeah, yes, but and I'm sure this debate can rage on till the French Open for the next few months. But I think we are unanimous that clearly Roger is right up there as the all-time greats.
Certainly.
The other good news, gentlemen, just to remind you, as we went into this match, that your predictions have actually come true. You both predicted it was going to be Roger, and it was. But it was a tough call, wasn't it?
But I dropped a set. I said you'd win in 4.
Yes, we both actually said that'll be 4 tough sets. But it was 5 tough sets, and we got to see them play for an extra set, so we're not complaining. But that's the nature of sport. Marin Cilic, one thought, wasn't in the match at all after that first set, and just the way he came back in that second set, he lifted his standards up, and he made a match of it. And again, even after having lost the 3rd set, break down in the 4th set, he didn't lose hope. That's one of the big things I think that all youngsters watching this match can take from it, that never lose hope, because it's never over till it's over. And he made a match of it. Just the way from 2-3 down in the 4th set, he literally caught fire, and Roger was lost for a while, and he didn't know what's going on. And you could see in the start of the 5th set, he was trying to get himself going. He shouted at the lines umpire for also a little bit, anything to get his energy going. And you know, if you study this match, there is so much you can learn from this match as a youngster. It's incredible.
In fact, I was going to ask you, Vishal, if you were the coach sitting there and you had a chance to advise Cilic before the start of that set number 5, what would you have told him?
Well, I would definitely tell him to focus a lot on his first serve and make sure he sticks close with Roger Federer and does not allow Roger Federer a lead. A break of serve was almost death for Marin Cilic, and you saw that as soon as Roger got that break in the 5th set, Cilic's levels kind of dropped a little bit, and that's what Roger Federer does to you. He hurts you the minute you slip up a little bit. For me, the way Cilic played that 4th set, I think it was too tough for him to, you know, maintain that high level for another set. That's why for me, you know, even the start of the 5th set, I said Federer is still the favorite to win this match. But the key for Cilic to, you know, trouble Roger would have to be to stick really close with Roger and hope that Roger gets a little nervous, you know, his game slips up a little bit, and that's when you catch him.
Yeah, what I feel, Gaurav, just to come in here, I felt that Marin Cilic in the first couple of sets was pulling the trigger a little too soon. I thought he was probably better off exchanging longer rallies with Roger. He was going for broke a little too soon in the rally, and I thought that cost him because his unforced errors, especially on the backhand side, were far greater than what they normally would have been. And he was going cross-court because I think the strategy was to attack Roger's backhand. But perhaps if he went a little more down the line and just kept more balls in play and went for that big shot, which he needed to, because I suppose that was his strategy, a little later in the rally might have helped.
But I think the reason why he might have gone for, you know, his shots also is because you don't want Roger Federer to start controlling points, because his shot making is so exceptional. The minute you give him a little bit of leeway to, you know, start dictating, he's going to be on top of you. So, you know, you're going to live by the sword, but you're also going to die by the sword. And that's kind of what happened to Marin Cilic today.
Excellent. And it's time now for me to thank both you gentlemen for coming to the studios and for your great insights for this delightful match. Thank you, Sanjeev. And thank you, Vishal.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank
you. Indeed, it's been a pleasure bringing you this live telecast from DD Sports. Thanks so much for joining us for all this action. From all of us here, it's thanks and goodbye.